Show with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What's going on, everybody? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome to the Fantasy Slammer NBA DFS Playbook Show. It is a Tuesday 4-game main slate. Happy John Morant return day to you, James.
Happy John Morant return day to you and all that are celebrating. It's an exciting time. Like, obviously, the suspension wasn't great, and why he was suspended wasn't great, and hopefully he has learned from it. But it is exciting. He's one of the league's most exciting players. He's one of the league's best players, frankly.
Right.
So, it is a treat to watch him play basketball. And Memphis needs it because they have not won a lot of games. They have lost a lot of games, and there's no time to waste. He hasn't been away because he's been injured. He's fully healthy. So I'm expecting a full John Morant right off the bat. So we'll see what that looks like on his opening night. But it is an exciting. It's Christmas before Christmas, getting one of the league's best players back almost a week before Christmas.
Right. Yeah, and it's a 4-game slate as well here. You and I obviously did the preview show this morning. We broke it all down. We took a look, and we were hoping maybe there would be some injury news that kind of comes out throughout the day, maybe help us with our lineup builds and roster construction. Didn't really get a lot of it, yet. So will be interesting to see. You obviously looked at the early rostership. I know that's been updated and put out earlier today on Fantasy Alarm. We talked about Zach Collins potentially being, one of the highest rostered players on the slate with Wemby out. I don't think either of us expected to see just how popular Zach Collins is going to be on this slate in a game where his team is a 16-point underdog here. But that's the big news, right? No Wemby for injuries here. Marcus Smart and Luke Kennard both again ruled out for Memphis, so they're not yet returning there for that team. I think we're still waiting potentially on some Porzingis news.
Yep, and we got we did get a Zion downgrade today.
We did get it right. That is true. We did get the Zion downgrade here in the middle of the day. So I guess that's something to potentially look for. Because as we discussed already, Pelicans are already way too cheap. And if Zion ends up getting ruled out here, it just increases the overall value of New Orleans here because there isn't a ton of value on the slate that we've really found here. So what's your big takeaways here before we break into the slate?
Yes and no on that value. Because there is definitely some value in San Antonio that's getting a lot of ownership. I guess we'll talk if it's good or bad chalk, but there is a lot of rostership going there in that game in general, even to some of the cheaper players. Like, it's not Giannis getting all the ownership, although Giannis is, but Bobby Portis, who's low fives, and Mamu Kavish, Sandro Mamu.
Yeah.
I used to be able to say the name. It's been a little rusty. Zach Collins is 4,900 and getting all the ownership, as you mentioned. So, obviously it's whether you're playing San Antonio chalk at this point and how you view a game with a 16-point spread on the road against one of the best teams in the NBA. What happens if Zion sits? What happens if Shaedon Sharpe sits? Does Chris Paul being out have any implications? Because he's questionable too. Right. So there's a lot of questions still to be answered on a 4-game slate. So we can get into things and maybe learn some more data on. I don't know if we will because it's a 7:30 lock and 2 of the games are 10 p.m. Yeah. And Shaedon Sharpe and Chris Paul and Kristaps Porzingis are in those 10 p.m. games. So I don't think we're going to get much information. Maybe we'll get the Zion news live and be able to react to it. And maybe we'll get John Morant if we get head coach Taylor Jenkins talking about minutes or expectations for John Morant too. Maybe we'll get that during the show.
Yeah, and Albert's in the chat already, and he's asking, are we using John Morant here tonight? And we'll start off at the point guard position because that is the question that everybody needs to sort of figure out here, right? Where are you with a $9,300 John Morant, the second highest price point guard, off the rip here on this 4-game slate?
If there's no limitations, I'm fine getting the John Morant. I think he is in the latest update of rostership. He is not being rostered at all, which is never a bad thing when you get someone of John Morant's caliber at no ownership at all. I mean, the Grizzlies in general are not getting ownership. I think that's comes with the territory of not knowing what to expect from the
Right.
Grizzlies because we've known it's been Jared Jackson, Desmond Bain, and everybody else, and then like sprinkle in value here and there. Um, Now you put a guy who was 1.5 fantasy points per minute and had a 35% usage rate in the middle of that, and it's like now I don't know what to do. If there's no limitations, I mean, you like Devin Booker is going to get ownership, and Damian Lillard is in the best game environment on the board in terms of total. But
Right.
how much time is Damian Lillard going to spend on the floor tonight versus Morant if there's no limit, right? If we do get word that there's no limit on Morant, I'll take a shot on a guy who's 4% on a 4-game slate. There's plenty of chalk options for me to.
And they may want him just to play to get his legs underneath him too. Like, first game back, maybe they do want to get him out there for 30 because they need him long term down there. And as you and I have talked a lot about, this isn't an injury that he's coming back. He's been able to work out and be conditioned and all those things and practice and stuff like that. So, Morant could just be good to go from the rip because they kind of need him to be. I actually, on the Better Sports Betting Show, took John Morant over 5.5 first quarter points because I was like, you know what? He's going to have an adrenaline rush. It's going to be the freshest he's been all game, right? And it's probably not going to early sub him. Early sub him for who? Gilliard? Like, they don't have anybody to take him off the floor for. So I kind of liked attacking that initial early first quarter prop for him here this evening. But you're right. From the pricing point, they're all pretty close. Booker maybe feels safer because of the matchup where it's not a 16.5 point spread for a long-term game here. And Portland is healthy and has, their best players potentially available. I know Shaden Sharp is the question there, but, Brogdon, Simons, Grant, Ayton, like that whole team is there for them. He could certainly find himself being productive even in blowouts. He tends to play minutes anyways. If we are moving down to the mid tier, though, if Zion's out, McCollum at $7,300 is already in a good spot. But there's the usage he would see there with Zion off the floor.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the issue for me if Zion doesn't play. It's like, well, I could play Morant at 93, but I could play CJ for $2,000.
Kristaps Porzingis ruled out tonight.
Well, that was nice and early.
Nice and early.
Okay. It's a 10 p.m. game.
Al Horford, 5,900. Fire away, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is actually a perfect timing because we're one position away from the guy who gets the biggest bump. Al Horford's going to be the guy to obviously sub in for Kristaps Porzingis, but he's not the one that sees the biggest benefit from Kristaps Porzingis this year. That's Derek White. Derek White gets almost a 4% usage bump that leads the Celtics higher than Tatum, higher than Brown. He also gets the biggest fantasy point per minute bump without Kristaps Porzingis per 36 minutes. He's actually 2 fantasy points higher than Jaylen Brown on the year. Derek White is. So Derek White, 1.18 fantasy points per minute without Kristaps Porzingis on the floor this year. I like McCollum. I would obviously really like him if Zion was out. But this Derek White news this Porzingis news is super significant. Pace-up spot for Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Multi-position eligibility for Derek White. He's one of my favorite plays of the slate overall with this recent news.
Yeah, I had over 8.5 rebounds and assists for Derek White tonight, as well as one of my favorite props. Obviously, now the Porzingis news probably gives him maybe a little bit of a boost there, maybe some rebounding. Kind of could trend his way a little bit with Zinger. Maybe his PRA now becomes a bit more appealing with the potential for him to add up as a scoring threat now on this offense. Because, Al Horford, he still can score. I can't say he can. I'm done doubting Al Horford at this point. But, at least the minutes will be there then, which is pretty encouraging to say. And I'm curious now, Zach Collins is still probably the chalkiest play on the slate, but I wonder if Zinger being out it's a little less expensive now to get a starting center for Boston, or like Luke Cornett becomes a viable backup.
Cornet's out.
Neemias Queta then, right, as the backup in that game. So something to look at. We'll see how that all unfolds. Thoughts on the Devin Vassell rostership here tonight? A lot of people are playing him. We talked about it at length this morning. In the blowouts, these guys do get 30 minutes, but they don't get more than 30 minutes. So do you think Vassell can return value on a $6,800 price tag in 30 minutes tonight against Milwaukee?
Can he? Yes. I don't know if this is like the spot. He does get the biggest usage bump, 4.6% usage bump when Victor Wembanyama's off the floor. So, if that's chalk you want to eat, I can't blame you, but it's fine. 1.16 fantasy points per minute is really good, but I just don't know if he's going to see a fourth quarter here.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. That's why I'm saying with the way the rostership is, you have a lot of the field, 40% of the field playing a guy that may only play, 3 quarters tonight. So, it feels like a fade spot to me because he's not cheap. So, Holiday is just below him. Again, no Porzingis. Yeah, I know Derek White gets the bump, but obviously, Holiday can potentially benefit from that spot there as well. Brogdon, again, we talked a lot about the lack of shot attempts from anybody not named Simons or Jeremy Grant lately. If Shaedon Sharpe is out, maybe there's some absorption to value there. Do you have any interest in the rest of this mid-tier, or is there a value guard that maybe you're finding yourself trending towards?
Drew Holiday is definitely fine. I like him more than pretty far ahead of Brogdon. Not to say Brogdon can't get there, but he just hasn't really been that guy with those two guys back, Simons and Grant. Mid-tier, Podziemski is apparently the correct pronunciation.
We're going really forward for these names here today.
He would obviously benefit from Chris Paul being out. So we've seen minutes. He's starting and playing 30-plus minutes to begin with, and we've seen a ceiling. So you can play that if you want. Sohan is getting a lot of ownership. Multi-position eligibility is mainly the reason as to why he's getting that. But we did see a ceiling on him not too long ago. If you think that game can stay close, maybe Sohan. Maybe if Shaedon Sharpe's out, you see Scoot Henderson absorb a few more minutes if Brogdon were to enter the starting lineup. I don't think he would. I think Thibault would probably enter the starting lineup if Shaedon Sharpe was out. But if Brogdon were to start, that would obviously benefit Scoot because he can run the second unit. And then all guys like Branham, Goodwin, and Trey Jones are all kind of the same. I mean, Trey Jones doesn't play in blowout. He's been more of just the backup point guard that has random blow up games, and he's a good player. Branham, Goodwin.
I don't mind Branham for the 5K because it feels like, his role sort of is that 30-ish minutes anyways with their rotation. I know he's played 33 and 34, but 28, 30, he was still able to kind of pay off the tag. He's not, almost 7K like the other guys are, right? He's 5K. So, more likely to pay off his price tag at 5K. And
he's also not as good. He's also just not as good as the other guys.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think he's a fine player.
Yeah. I'm just saying the comparison to I don't think it's relatively close between him and Vassell or him and Keldon Johnson.
No, sure. But I'm saying, look at these recent games. He's been pretty good.
Sure. He has been. Yeah.
There's no Wemby on the floor now. So, there's some potential there. At 5K, it just feels more palatable, to pay off that spot. Are you doing any of the value guards for the Pelicans here tonight? If there's no Zion? Daniels,
probably not. Najee Marshall is now probable. So I feel like we see a situation where Najee Marshall is the guy that we see the biggest bump with Zion out, at least from the bench. We saw that in the Washington game where Najee Marshall had a really big outing. So probably a pass for me.
Okay. Moving on over to the shooting guard position then. We've talked Booker already. Curry as well is in the same range. Desmond Bane's $8,700. I think we talked this morning. Yeah, I'm not really looking to pay for Desmond Bane at 87 with John Morant back. I want to see sort of how that plays. I'm more comfortable paying the Morant price, I think, at this point, because last year, Morant had a 35% usage rate and averaged 1.5 fantasy points per minute. Bane this year is averaging, I think, a 30% usage rate, but that's without John Morant on the floor. You put Morant on the floor, feels only natural that Desmond Bane takes the hit here, and paying off $8,700 feels a little difficult to me.
Yeah, I mean, could Desmond Bane go off? Sure, but it's highly unlikely.
That's kind of how I'm looking at it there as well. Obviously, Ingram's an elite play. If no Zion, $7,800. Thoughts on Jaylen Brown, Anthony Simons in this range as well?
Brown is solid, 2.5% usage bump, up to 1.13 fantasy points per minute without Porzingis. So I like that. Simon's always in play in GPPs.
Sure. Anybody else in this mid-tier range for you? Middleton, Thompson, Trey Murphy, $5,800.
Clay's been good. Can definitely play him in tournaments. It's not the easiest spot. Middleton's really good production, really good matchup. You can play him for
sure. Okay. Our value tier down here again, guys. We've touched upon Grayson Allen is probable to play tonight. It's $5,500. Meek Beasley also probable tonight, $5,400. Both of those guys are playing a whole bunch of minutes. Moses Moody may find himself with a bigger role tonight if Chris Paul gets ruled out at $4,800. Then you have, again, some of these depth San Antonio pieces. Any core plays for you?
Murphy at 58, if Zion were to sit, would be a core play. We agreed on the Allen over Gordon thing on the pod. That hasn't changed. If Beasley makes shots, can hit value, but I don't expect him to play fourth quarter. Nothing really else stands out. I mean, you can play Spurs Champagny if you want, but I don't think there's much else.
All right. Moving on over to the small forward position, then you have Jason Tatum at $9,500. Now, no Kristaps Porzingis. We've talked sort of the rest of this tier. Keldon Johnson is 69. Wiggins off the bench at 57. I mean, again, on a smaller slate, we have a lot of high rostership and a lot of core plays. Do you find yourself looking to get different at all here?
Yeah, I mean, Tatum 13% rostered. That was pre-Porzingis news. You could definitely get there. 1.3 fantasy points per minute. It's elite. Ingram's really good. Brown, we mentioned. Keldon is going to be really popular. Do you think he's going to play the fourth? Yeah.
Okay. Anybody? I mean, is again small tier, small player pool. So, is there like a contrarian play for you? Like you go back to the Vince Williams? I mean, like anything like that?
No. Wiggins 57 stands out a little bit with how he's played off the bench, and that's kind of it. Herbert Jones is fine. Not going to McDermott at 3,400, and that's it.
Okay. Power forward position here. Dez in the chat. What's up, Dez? Hope you're having a fine day here today, sir. Giannis is at $11K. Durant's at $9,600. No Wemby tonight. Ruled out. Triple J with the returning John Morant's at $8,200. Obviously now no Kristaps, a questionable Zion, Jeremy Grant at $7,100. Do you find yourself paying up for Giannis here tonight in that big point spread total?
I mean, you can. He's gone for 60 fantasy points in 30 minutes, plenty of time. So if you think he can get you 55 plus, by all means. Sometimes raw points matter the most on 4-game slates. Definitely good with Durant. He's been super safe, probably best in cash. Triple J in tournaments. Zion, really good price if he plays. Jeremy Grant, really good tournament play at 7,100, given his scoring upside. I do like Al Horford quite a bit at 59 with multiple.
Yeah, Horford certainly, I think, plays up a little bit at center as well. Again, with the dual positional eligibility. He just plays the minutes when Zinger's been out. He didn't play 3 straight games over 30 minutes there when Porzingis missed some time. The rebounds have been great. Again, scoring's a bit inconsistent, but this slate's kind of interesting the way they go about it. You mentioned Bobby Portis getting some love here. Is that someone that you're keying in on?
No, but you can get there in tournaments always.
Sure. Not really a lot of value here. You mentioned Najee Marshall. I guess that would be the play if Zion's out and he's in.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, he's probably Najee Marshall being probable. Obviously, we'll have to see how that's going about here. Center spot then. Again, quickly moving through these 4 games for everybody. A lot of these guys we've discussed already, but we do have now Nurkic, Valanciunas, Ayton, and Brook Lopez all in this mid tier. Thoughts on how you'd rank that group?
Valanciunas 1 if Zion were out. Valanciunas 1 if Zion's in.
Okay.
So just default Valanciunas 1. Nurkic 2, Brolo 3, big gap, DeAndre Ayton 4.
Yeah, again, I don't even really have much of any interest for Ayton here tonight, personally. Valanciunas for sure. Again, core play for us. We talked about it. I think he's even the cover of today's live show. So, very clearly where we're leaning in that direction. Again, after that, it falls off. Xavier Tillman did start yesterday, and then you have the chalk monster in Zach Collins. Do you find yourself just following the chalk with Collins tonight because he's so highly rostered? Does the fact that 80% of the field is playing this guy on a 4-game slate make you think that fading him is the right play?
I think in cash you have to play him. In tournaments you can get away with fading him.
Sure.
He's a good fantasy point per minute guy. Do you need to play him? I don't know. 1.1 fantasy points per minute without Wemby. This feels maybe like the spot you just don't fade. Tillman's probably dead. Biombo's off the injury report, so
Sure.
No thanks there. I assume Biombo is just going to start like he's been. The only other thing that I'd mention is Mamu at 3K is the second highest rostered player of the slate tonight. He is also like approaching 50% rostership,
which is hilarious for a guy that hasn't played more than 10 minutes in 2 games this year.
Well,
2 games this year.
Well,
right?
It's also just a different situation because Charles Bassey has been the backup center. Charles Bassey's out, and now Wemby's the starting center, and he's out. So, you basically are like the assumption is Collins minutes until the blowout just basically ends, and then Mamu is.
I was just saying, Mamu plays what, the 15 minutes tonight? You think, like 20 minutes tonight? What's your?
I projected it 30 and 18 is how I projected it. I gave
30 for Collins, 18 for Mamu.
Yep.
Okay, I could definitely see that. Again, he's not a guy I don't think would project to play a ton of minutes in this game. Now, Zach Collins could also get in foul trouble, right? Running up against Brook Lopez, Giannis, that crew there, and then maybe forces Mamu into some more playing time. Do you find yourself more appealed towards Mamu here than Zach Collins? Like, what's your if 80% is playing Zach Collins and 50% is playing Mamu? Like, where's your exposure going?
Both.
Okay, just double tapping.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it allows you to get 2 of the top dogs on this slate fairly easily.
Out of Valanciunas, obviously, if you double tap it.
So. Yeah, I mean, if that, yes, that's obviously the Valanciunas news or the Williamson news is obviously super important there. Not that Valanciunas hasn't been great without Zion, but he is the fantasy point per minute leader on that team without Zion. So I would be more likely to play Collins, but I understand why 50% of the field is getting to a center at 3K who, is going to be the backup and is also going to get blowout run because that game is a 16-point spread.
Agreed. I see 3U in here as well, saying what's going on. 4 games tonight. Again, kicks off at 7:30. We have primetime games here. TNT game leading us off, Memphis, New Orleans, and then the Boston Celtics, Golden State Warriors game closes out the night here. James, want to get a lineup going?
Yeah.
How are we approaching this? I guess we're going to go Collins to begin with, and then obviously we would pivot away if we get the Zion news at some point in here.
Yeah, or we could just shift Collins to util or something.
Sure.
If we get the Zion news. I
wasn't sure if you wanted to go Collins, Mamu, and just you said, get the value in here. So we got Mamu. What's your point guard tonight?
Booker. I'd probably rank them in tournaments. Booker, Morant. I'd probably rank them as they're priced.
Okay. You liked Derek White as well, right? So
Derek White for sure.
Shooting guard there. Small forward play. Murphy, just in general, and then he gets a boost up if he's out, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Or Middleton, one of the 2.
Sure. Can chug them both in there. That works for me too. Middleton 64. $6,600 power forward and a guard.
Power forward and a guard. I mean, the power forward chalk is obviously Keldon, Portis, Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jeremy Grant's a good pivot. I think Tatum's a good pivot. I think Durant is a good pivot if we didn't play Booker.
Sure. Well, we did Tatum. That would give you 37. We need a cheap guard there. Probably doesn't pay it off. Al Horford is $7,300 for a guard, which would give us McCollum.
Yeah, we could do that. McCollum's fine with Zion anyway.
Yeah. So you'd have Booker, White, Murphy, Horford, Collins, McCollum, Middleton, and Mamu again. And obviously, based off some availability and injury news, we could pivot around Najee Marshall under 4K. There, if Zion get ruled out, he'd certainly be a bit more appealing. Any other lineup thoughts here, James? Anything else you want to try to build with? I mean,
nope.
Yeah, all right. Guys, again, just 4 games. Kicks off at 7:30 here tonight. So short slate, short show per usual. But we are going to be in that Discord, so don't hide away. Find us in there. If you're not already a member of the Fantasy Star family, now is your time to go and join and get in that premium Discord channel. We have our Let's Go promo still going on. It's 50% off the first month. It's like $19.98 a month for that first month here. So go to fantasystorm.com/let's go or use promo code or use this QR code there on the screen to take advantage of today's holiday offer. Again, guys, 4 games. We'll be back tomorrow. 11 games on the main slate. Sean Mitchell is on the playbook. Sean Mitchell will be joining me actually on the preview show for tomorrow's slate as well. So you get a little re-intro or new intro for those of you who are longtime Fantasy Star members. Of course, you remember Sean from back in the day doing content with us. If you're new, it'll be your first time getting to listen to Sean break down a slate with me. And then tomorrow, we're going to be doing the live stream a little bit later on in the day. Targeting around 5:30 or 5:30 to 6:30 stream for the 11 games there. Just moving some things back to fit some scheduling stuff on. So be on the lookout for that again a little bit later on for the Wednesday stream for a usual start time there. Follow us on Twitter if you have any questions. Get us in the Discord. And good luck tonight. We'll enjoy Ja Morant's return to the floor. I'm sure we will be as well. We'll catch you guys later.